I want to thank you guys for allowing me to host this discussion. I got with me, my colleagues in the progressive design build and the lean delivery world, and Brandon, a partner architect. Brandon, and I don't want to say the firm name is wrong. What's the correct way to pronounce your firm's name?
It's Mithun.
It's Mithun. I thought it was, but sometimes I get thrown off. It's like, it's not Mithun, it's Mithun or something. But it's a pleasure to have you, Brandon. Thank you for joining us. Henry Nutt. Henry's a pre-con exec over at one of my favorite mechanicals, Southland. Say hello, Henry.
Hello, everyone. How's it going?
All right. Henry's been quite a movement within the lean IPD world. He's done quite a bit of work. Is really, I think, almost Henry feels like in the last 4 or 5 years, you've really taken the mantle for Southland and IPD, integrated project delivery. So I want to thank you I know how busy you are. Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you.
And my comrade and crime fighter, Andy Van Lowe. We've spent a lot of time in the desert together working on projects and delivering work. He's a partner at Excel. My favorite, I'm not afraid to say it, my favorite civil engineer, Excel Engineering. Andy, you want to say hello?
Well, hello, everybody. Andy Van Looy, by the way, crime fighter. I might be the crime fighter. I just solved the case of you stealing the Y off the last, my last letter in my.
Did it fall off? Did it fall off again? I do that often, Andy. And one of my favorite structural engineers, progressive, innovative, smart, and this dude's got so many things behind his names. I could be going doing this for an hour. He is part of the design build DBIA board of directors. I think he's been chair at some point. Yep. He's also heavy part of the lean integrated council also. So Ron, I don't know how he finds so much time to do all the stuff he does and deliver work, but I think it's 2 of them. But Ron's a structural engineer, senior principal at Buehler Engineering. Ron, we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Yep.
And I want to introduce myself again because that would be extremely boring. We'll jump right into this. I just want to let you guys know if you have questions. We're going to go through quite a bit of questions and answer here. But if you have questions, throw them into the chat. If Dave or Thea, somebody could just keep an eye on chat questions, we'll see if we can make some space and answer some questions from the group at large. That's okay. All right. All right, let's see if I can do this and not crash my computer. All right, so let's kick this off. I went ahead, just staring at our faces didn't seem like it would be near as much fun as being able to see screens and questions. So I don't know, now that I've done it, I don't know if it's all that great now. but our first question up was, as I said, what is a working definition of progressive design build? We're not, progressive design build has not been around a long time. And I'm always surprised at how many people do not have a working understanding of progressive design build. So hence having Ron, a part of the panel, was perfect because he has been a part of the whole design build movement and probably heavily in some of the language and process that are, although it did come from PINCO, part of the process that are currently being implemented as part of progressive design build. So I'm going to ask Ron if he can give us some comparisons between, give us an oversight of what progressive design build is and give us some comparisons with lean IPD.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So what I thought I would do is just to create a baseline is talk about what traditional design build is, and then we'll talk about what progressive design build is, and then note what those differences are and what the benefits are. So in a traditional design build, owner releases an RFQ. Then they may go through an interview and select 3 teams, the design build entities, to move on to the RFP stage. And then when the RFP is issued, the team then designs and provides a cost for the project based on the program. And this can be a tremendous amount of expended resources to get to a number, right? It's a guaranteed price. You have to do enough design that you have your arms around it completely. And so, and then the team that provides the best value is selected. Sometimes it's based on the cost per point. So you might get rated based on your design, you get points for that. And then the cost, if the cost is different and it's not a stipulated sum, then a lot of times they'll make the selection based on the best cost per point. The other teams that did not get the project get a stipend for their efforts. And what we've traditionally seen, it's 10 cents or 25 cents on the dollar at best. And so there's a lot of waste that can go into those. In fact, a lot of design firms were refusing to do design build projects just because of the expenditure resources with a 1 in 3 chance. And sometimes the short lists are more than that. So, and so progressive design build really came out of a response to that. So after the project, the team selected, then they construct the project. All right, let's talk about progressive design build. Same thing, starts the same way. Owner releases an RFQ, request for qualifications. And then there could be an interview. They may reduce the number, but eventually they're going to reduce it down to 3 teams, hopefully no more than 3 teams. And they move on to an RFP stage. Now, the RFP stage is, it gives you more information than what you would have had in the RFQ. It was just basic qualifications. But now here's where the differences are. The team selection process is really predominantly based on qualifications. There's only a small component of cost in it, and it's really the cost to do pre-con to get to a GMP. So in this process, there's little, if any, design approach, and really experience, is probably the biggest aspect of it. The owner has to feel comfortable that they have a team that they feel they can work with that has the right experience and the right design approach. And so after they do interviews from the RFP, they select the one that they want to work with. So there's been virtually no design, no big effort. We don't have a cost. A lot of times these are stipulated sums. So they know what they're going to spend, and they have a list of, requirements, program requirements, but they also might have a list of enhancements that they would like to integrate in if they can so find the means and the design team and the construction team that can deliver the project. So the team with the owner then goes into this pre-con phase. I like to call it validation phase, where they're going to get to a point where they're going to establish a GMP. And then having the owner in the room allows the team to fully understand what the owner's values are. The one thing that we miss when we do traditional design build is we're reading between the lines, we have confidential meetings, and we're discussing, hey, this seemed like this was really important to them, or that wasn't so important to them, and we're guessing. But in this format, when we're all in the room together developing the GMP, then we can understand exactly what's important to them. Do they want terrazzo floors? Do they want curtain wall? There's all these system selections. They want net zero, or they want to save the first cost for something else. And so by having the owner in the room, you're getting as close to an integrated project delivery setup that you can without your profit at risk. So the owner then has the opportunity at the end of this validation phase or pre-con phase to off-ramp, is what we would call it. So if they didn't like the design, they could say, hey, sorry, it didn't work, but we're just not thrilled with it. Or the price for the design they were getting didn't meet their expectations. Or maybe the team couldn't get to the stipulated sum for the program budget. So all these give the owner the opportunity to say, sorry, it's not working. We're going to go a different direction. They might put the drawings on the street if they like the design. They could go to another design build entity. They could find more money for the budget, and maybe it comes back out on the street as a progressive design build once again. And maybe they'll want to work with a different team. So this gives total control to the owner at this stage, And the team then has actually been paid for their pre-con efforts. So the design in those early phases are all paid because you have a fee that you're contracted for to get to a GMP. If the design cost meets the owner's expectations, then they sign the contract and finish the design and then construct the project. And that's how most projects work. I want to say of the progressive design builds, it's in the 90-something% that when a team is selected, that they carry it all the way through construction. So just a couple of points, just want to make on benefits. Team gets paid for the design and the pre-con effort. So there's no time or resources at risk. The owner's in the room, so you don't need to guess or read between the lines. And you get to understand what's important to them. So, if you're doing a target value delivery process and you're looking for, what they want, there you have them in the room. And if you're doing TVD, then there's opportunities to horse trade different buckets. In the GMP phase, it also provides an opportunity for innovation. This is the time frame where you can do set-based designs. We can test 5 different systems and find out which one's the best system. You can do CBA, choosing by advantages, to make system selections or making decisions. You can incorporate those in an A3 document, so that we have those decisions documented at the end of this phase. And obviously, we had always used last planner system to schedule the design and the milestones. So I think there's really opportunities to utilize all the lean tools we've been using in big rooms and IPD projects. And the next thing is every step of the process adds value. The goal of actually providing design that the owner wants. There's no wasted effort. So isn't that the objective that we're trying to do in design build? So that's what we're going to be talking about here today.
Awesome. Thank you. That was awesome, Ron. See, as you can see, he obviously wrote a progressive design build, because all right, you have explained it a lot of times, because that was awesome.
That's true.
Thanks, Ron. My next question is, so this question is I'm gonna throw out to Henry, because Henry's our design build trade partner on the call, and so he's got a ton of experience as design build trade partner and a ton of lean IPD experience also. So Henry, lean processes started with an understanding of value, and you totally understand that. So what's the most valuable thing you as thing to your organization, and how do you define what value is when you guys are either chasing a project as a progressive design build project or as a lean IPD project? And as you also know, once the design crew or pre-con folks have done that, the next question always is, how do you export that to the field staff, right? So how do you guys determine that value, define that value, and then make sure it makes it all the way down to the field?
Okay, so thanks for the question. And the first part of it, I'll say that it's a question that you inherently have to answer before the project. It's like you understand what is valuable to your organization. And it may sound fluffy, it may sound like a commercial, but really it comes down to understanding what's important to your customer. And it's really in the chain of the customer org chart. You have your internal customers and you have ultimately your owner customer. And so it's important to understand what is really important to them at the end of the day. We're building this structure for them, and understanding how we get to that place of completion, what's important to them. Is it important that we do it exactly how they want? Are they open to different ideas that will obviously save costs and time? In some cases that may be valuable, in some cases it may not. So it's asking the right questions. And then one of the tenets of lean ops, transparent and open in regards to our conversations. So really understanding that portion, and knowing how to communicate that. So the way we find value, I say key is first ask a list of questions, get an understanding of what is important to the customer, and then in our internal network of customers, it's how we pass down information to each group. It's knowing again what that next person in line is needing and how they need it. and that we bring it to them in that way. So it's first doing that, and then as far as the passing it down to our teams and to the project team, there's several things. I think I remember working on a project years ago, really, and it was a pharmaceutical company that built, that manufactured drugs that help save people's lives, and it was an understanding of what that end product did for people in the community and the world. And so how you bring in people who swing hammers and move steel and dig dirt, how do you get them connected to the big picture is you have a proper onboarding process, and you make sure that you bring everybody into the fold that are your key leaders, so they can disseminate that information down to their teams. But it's first bringing in that first line of command, essentially in the field, to really understand what they're delivering beyond just what they do every day for the last however many years. It's now, how does it connect to this project? How is it valuable to this particular owner? Why is it important to the community that you're even working in? And bring in that element of understanding to kind of set a tone and a mindset to that team delivering the work. Because as we know, that 60% of our risk lies in the field. And so we can do all these great things on pre-con, as Ron mentioned, and coming up with validation and removing a lot of the waste that can happen, obviously, in that stage once it's passed down. But it'd be a shame to deliver all that value and then you go pass the baton to the folks installing it and they drop it. And so it's really important that they have an understanding to even some of the risks that were taken, an appreciation for the work that was done on pre-con, what this baton being passed to them looks like and why, and how they need to deliver it, and how they execute in a very excellent way and working as a team. So we've taken teams, again, that have never done any type of IPD, progressive design build, and brought in that leadership, spent adequate time to really onboard them and get them to understand what they're doing, why it's important, again, to the community, to the owner, and ultimately to them, and hoping that they're going to have the best experience that they've ever had on a project. And when you spend that type of time and the investment to that, it's really, really important, and it really does bring that value. It really does help shape the mindset. So traditional conflict, traditional issues that are gonna happen for sure, how they deal with them changes. How we handle the conflict changes. How we instruct that leadership team to deal with conflict changes. And so as you help kind of recreate the experiences that people are having in the field with some of the same things that they've dealt with maybe for 20, 30 years, and they have an expectation it's just going to be the same. And when that general foreman in the field or leader in the field is able to show them a different way, it helps reshape that mindset that they have and say, oh, they really mean business. They're about what they say. And what they just showed us in this onboarding process is actually what they're doing. So it connects those dots, that it becomes something that's valid to them and not just lip service. And so there's those types of things that I think are really important. And one of my last projects, that's what I was able to do, was really help our team make sure that field group was going to be ready and had appreciation for what they're about to do, and not just go into it as a, like status quo.
Awesome. Thank you, Henry. I appreciate that.
And Steve,
go ahead, Andy.
Jump on to question 3. I just wanted,
Yep.
Based on what Ron was saying from question 1 and also what Henry was just adding there, I think they both brought up very valuable points. And as probably one of the few civil engineers who jump on these sort of things, the perspective that we have from our discipline as well, both from the progressive design build lean processes versus the design build process, civil engineering and surveying, we are so far out in front on a project before any of the other design starts to get going, that we're looking at zoning, entitlements. Is the property even developable from an entitlement standpoint, a jurisdictional standpoint? And then you're moving into the geotechnical. Part of our process on projects is trying to find out and make the unknowns known as early as possible, which is a benefit to the entire team, and especially the owner, and whatever contractor outfit moves in, either from a design build approach or from the progressive design build approach. I'm a big proponent of the progressive design build and lean process approach, the IPD approach. For that reason, is Ron said, we like to get paid for our work, and we are basically 75, 80% done with our design by the time everybody else's plans are 35%. So that sort of value that's brought to the project, I try and impress upon my team in my office, is the best thing that you can do is make the unknowns known to the rest of the design team and cut down the questions that come up later. And I just wanted to kind of add that in here based on these two questions that were tied together here.
All right. Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate that, man. All right. So what we've just heard in mind, this question I'm going to throw at you, Brandon. So how does progressive design build procurement? We understand IPD and how it supports the value proposition, but how does progressive design build, very similar to integrated design or lean project delivery, how does it support the value generation process from your point of view, Brandon? Like you, I know what it's like to try to convey an owner's idea and convert it into something that can be carried all the way through to completion and operations. That's a tough bucket to carry. How do you guys do that, Brandon?
It is a great question, Steve, and I think there's a lot of layers to it. I wanted to circle back really quickly to, Ron gave a wonderful overview of kind of the progressive model and its, relative differences to the traditional kind of more competitive version. I think one thing that we're seeing in our work, I've had the pleasure of working down in San Diego through a lot of traditional models and also involved in some progressive work there. But up here in Seattle, one model that's starting to evolve is kind of commonly referred to as the snowball approach, but it's really, it's kind of a progressive team building. And so from a value standpoint, this is a model in which the contractor is actually selected first, and then the architect, and then a series of consultants, and kind of a sequential series of steps that allow the owner really full control over the destiny of bringing the best possible players for that project together. And I will say this is both a really amazing thing if you end up sort of, kind of working with a project, because it's a really hand-picked team that is the best of the best. It can be a pain in the ass also in terms of the amount of variables that are involved with kind of forming a team. But from a value standpoint, that's a great origin point, because it also offers the owner not a finite set of choices of the three teams that always form themselves up to kind of compete after the same types of work, but really sort of it's more of a la carte menu as opposed to kind of the fixed menu at the dining experience. So that's a starting point. I think the other piece is the really Henry and others talked about this, but that aligned value piece, really a firsthand understanding of the kind of trajectory and the mission through kind of outreach and involvement with the owner. I really can't overstate the importance of having the right stakeholders at the table. I think that, Ron described it as kind of guessing, earlier. And I think that's something that the traditional model forces us to do, is to really sort of think about what we speculate might be the values based on what we understand and who we know. And, we've created avatars, we've done top secret sort of research as, the best we can, but there's nothing like sitting in a room. And I think, the point that or the trend that I'm starting to see in a lot of my projects is that things are evolving really quickly. And I'm sure for all of you on this call, your clients, there's not sort of a fixed circumstance that kind of guides the project. And by the time a DPP is written for a traditional model, by the time the competition happens and the team is selected, 10 or 15 really important variables might have changed on the owner's side that really makes some of that information obsolete. And so the progressive model really allows for a more nimble application of kind of current thinking. A good example, I'm working on a STEM education building at the University of Washington currently. And, we're just finishing up our kind of project definition study, which has allowed a lot of latitude in how the project, which was originally a 100,000 square foot building that was dedicated to kind of an even split between classrooms and labs. The COVID realities have really impacted what the kind of nature of that project is. And, the sort of test has been that, it's really hard to replace labs with online learning and remote facilities. you really need that hands-on facility. So our program mix has really shifted to more of a 70-30 or 60-40 model just in the last few months. And, you know, in a traditional model, that kind of conversation with the right stakeholders would have never been possible. So I think I think the progressive model and a lot of the lean principles that are embedded in this conversation allow for a nimbleness. And I think that's something that we all need in how we face our current and future work.
Awesome. Thank you, Brendan. Anybody else any other guys wanted to add an additional comment before I move to the next one?
The only thing I would say was, I think Brendan hit it on the head, and I didn't really touch upon it, that we are seeing progressive design build, kind of teams built from the inside out, just like he said, a GC, an architect, and then design disciplines and trade partners and so on. And they'll send out separate RFPs and then that team then goes into the validation phase. So you're handpicking each of your consultants and seeing a lot of success. It's kind of how we used to build IPD teams.
Awesome. That's a good point. Good point. All right. I think this next question kind of falls right into that same kind of category. So it's I'm gonna throw this to Andy Van Low. Low or low? I'll give you a Y. I like low though. Andy, how does lean processes handle the inherent inside the box, right, and versus the outside the box mindset between building construction disciplines, trades, and construction trades and designers, right? We know that lean project delivery wants to start with as many people as part of the discussion up front, so that everyone has this sort of all-encompassing knowledge of the project who's contributing to this huge body of knowledge. How does progressive design, which is the closest I've seen to IPD, kind of mimic that process in your eyes?
First, when you go low, I go high, Steve. The lean process, I want to touch really quick on Brendan, the snowball approach. And that actually kind of throws right towards what I'm talking about here, is when you build the team from that perspective, and you have the GC start with it, or just one entity start with it, and then they kind of branch out as they go. They're bringing in the disciplines that they know at that particular time that they need. So that leads to kind of this here, the inside the box versus the outside the box. As you start to develop a project, you're going to have your building, you're going to have your site, but when you're starting to get into the design of the building, the footings of the building, how much, where the building is going to be located on the site, what the access and how the building is going to feed into the community, and the community into the building itself. You start getting those questions being asked more often very early, and that's the questions that we are trying to answer from our discipline, our own personal discipline. We're always outside the box, or traditionally have been outside the box, and not really caring. It's that 5-foot cutoff. I don't want to go in there, and you don't want to come out here, and let's just call it a day. But what happens then is that we are, as I said earlier, we're so far out in front with our plans and our project as a whole, that by the time the actual building construction begins, by the time the actual building design really gets going and picks up steam, we're heavy into the permitting process with the jurisdictions, just trying to get to where we can where we can grade out the pad, certify the pad, pour the footings, and go vertical, because the long lead is always going to be going vertical. Mm-hmm. But what happens then is I'm dark for 2 months, and all of a sudden I start getting RFI after RFI after RFI after RFI. It's like, well, why didn't this get talked about earlier? And so the first time that I was ever exposed to a lean process and an IPD process was out there in the desert with you, Steve. Yeah. And you, to your credit, started asking the tough questions early, and including everybody as part of the team. Ron was actually on that project as well.
Yeah, sure was.
And the questions started becoming, why is the structural asking something from the civil engineer? Well, that's normal. Why is the architect asking something from the civil engineer? That's normal. But then the mechanical engineer started asking something from the civil engineer. I started asking something from plumbing, which is somewhat normal. But those questions and that trust between the disciplines and knowing that everything is interconnected started taking shape. And that just got enhanced by the lean process and the last planner system. Once you start putting tags up on the board, everything becomes, this is the team, this is the project. Everybody's tag has 3 or 4 different people that they're talking to, and people start to see the difference between throwing something over the wall, being in their silo, and that inside the box versus outside the box is eliminated. It's one box.
Yep.
So
That's cool.
I think that was the biggest thing that hit me at that point, and that's the value that I try and bring to my particular group of folks at my company as well, to participate in that as much as possible.
That's awesome. Thank you, Andy. Anybody else want to add something?
Yeah, I'd like to add. I think just to add to that, I think that's great points that Andrew made, and we look at ourselves as partners. You know, that the part of the mindset that also has shifted with progressive design build and the whole lean initiatives is about raising the level of participation and expectation for each player. So instead of being just this traditional subcontractor that's kind of being directed, it's like you're hiring a partner. You're bringing someone in with excellence in their craft, and they're there to serve a purpose. They have the expertise and experience in this particular area of their business that the team needs. And they don't wait for someone to say, hey, we need you to do this. You're engaged in the conversation, and that type of I guess culture is established in the beginning, so that you are comfortable, you're building that trust, and you're participating. You're not waiting for someone to tell you to do something and then they do it wrong and you point the finger and say, see, I told you so. That's going to cost you a few more extra dollars. It's being upfront, it's being proactive, it's engaging and recognizing that you're at the level of partner. And a partner brings value. A partner understands they bring value and are willing to share that. And then you have these cross conversations happening, as Angie's talking about, with all these different players on the field that are now like having conversations. And imagine that, you know, we say this is interconnected, and I think by design, we know it is, but we've treated it like it's like a separate puzzle. And so it's this whole thing of bringing everyone together with intention at the earliest point possible, and actually having those conversations so you can iron out and expose the risk, the unknowns, the things that the people understand in particular crafts. Hey, I know what this looks like. I know it, we've lived this before. I can share what some of the pitfalls are, and we need you here to share that with us like now. You know, and so I think I heard a person say in a project of what is the greatest risk on this particular project? That player should be involved early as possible, sharing how you mitigate those risks. You know, and so we've had projects where the labor pool was going to be one of the biggest risks, and we're building this huge construct that had this roof on it that was going to impact the lower level, and everyone was going to have to go away for a certain amount of time while they're going to construct this structure on top of the people working below it. So knowing that they're going to lose like 30-40% of their labor craft, their field, and then maybe not get them back became the biggest risk. And so we figured out a way of, one, we begin to address that. No one knew the right answer day one, but we began to have these conversations with all these different people involved in one room, effectively having these conversations. And until we finally realized that we found a way to do it. And it took an engineer kind of helping us understand what we can use to support this structure and what timeline we had to be in that space. And it couldn't have been done in a silo. But in traditional construction, we would have waited, we would have lost the people, they would have built their roof, and we would have scrambled trying to get all those A players back we needed to have this excellent team. And so I think those kind of things, progressive design build, allows you to like, again, to challenge status quo and to look at it in a way that, hey, we can do this, but, and the but comes in the different partners that you have. I need him, I need her, I need this team to be here for us to solve it. So
I like the word Henry used was culture. That just sums it up right there. It creates a culture. It creates that teamwork, the partnership. So
yeah.
I agree. Thanks, Henry. My next question is, and this kind of rolls back to something you said early on in your kind of overall presentation, Ron, So I'm gonna give this question to you, Ron. You know, of the previous mentioned lean tools, you talked about a bunch of them that could be used or adapted to progressive design build. Talk about two in particular. You know, and the lean tool is, I'm sorry, as when it comes to the principles or the that can support or augment the design build delivery systems. Do you believe, you know, so I've had this argument all the time, you know, can you use pull planning in progressive design build? I think target value design is a natural tool to be used for progressive design build. Do you believe that they properly support progressive design build? And I know we are doing well. Some teams are still doing co-locating. I was out at a site the other day. They're doing distancing. You know, a huge conference room that used to seat 20 now seats 10, so you can maintain your distancing. But you know, what do you think of Coalition's values for progressive design and build and the other tools we use in Lean?
No, and see, that's where I think really the progressive design build has a big advantage over other procurement methodologies. And just that, you know, you're bringing an integrated team together, you know, in a big room or in a big room type setting in order to make decisions together. And just like what was just talked about, you know, the culture that gets developed, the risks that get identified early in the process, that's all part of it. And having, you know, this validation pre-con phase where you have everybody in that room, you know, leads itself to utilizing the things that we would utilize in an IPD process. So that validation phase or pre-con phase is really sets up ideally for innovation for number one, you know. And so if you're using a set-based design for system selections and you're, you know, whether it's structural or mechanical or electrical or even making decisions, you know, different types of finishes, different types of exterior cladding, you know, is it prefab? Is it, you know, conventional stick frame? All these decisions get made early in the process. And so by using target value delivery, where you can target the values of the owner and how you're going to deliver the project, you can start early so that rather than, you know, building what is designed, you design what you want to build. And so you're kind of working backwards in the TVD process so that you're staying in line with what the expectations were. We save money in one bucket, we might use it in a different bucket. And so another part of that gets used in this is using a choosing by advantages process for making decisions, where you can compare multiple alternatives and reduce those down, where you look at the advantages of each alternative, and then there's a cost component that comes with it. And that really is the value proposition. Does a team want to spend the money for these advantages? And it just came off a project where we were looking at a concrete versus steel structure, and the system that got selected was the more expensive system because the paramount advantage was, what is the future flexibility over the next 50 years? And that was so important to the owner that he's willing to spend the extra money to go to that system. So you never know going in until you run through the process and you have the owner in the room to help you make that decision. And then, you know, documenting those things in an A3 format is a great way of capturing that knowledge to be used at a future time. But even when memories fade a little bit, how did we get to where we got? And then you mentioned the last planner system or pool planning. You have to go through the full last planner system. You have to start with the big chunks of time, the milestones, the handoffs, and then you get into doing more phase pool planning where you're looking at more specific handoffs of information so that decisions can be made at the appropriate time. And unless you plan that process, you're either going to miss opportunities or there's going to be something that you wish you had done different. And then as you were talking about big rooms, you know, they're kind of been doing a lot of virtual big rooms now. And so we're online, and we might be online for hours at a time. We'll do pool planning online, going through constraint logs, risk logs, so it really develops the same mentality that we'd have if we were all in the same room. Now, is it as good? Personally, I don't think so. It's better to have all the people in the room. But if you don't have that option, it certainly can work, and we're seeing some success with it right now. And
Awesome.
so, really, progressive design build gives you the opportunity to have a IPD project without your profit at risk, and that's really what we're looking for.
And
Awesome.
Ron, just to weigh in a little bit, I think there was a question from John in the chat about the
Yeah,
kind
I
of,
was just about to read a question. I was just about to take a chance and dive into the chat and read a question or two. See,
Yeah.
test my time management skills. Andy, no comments, please. So I'm gonna dive in and I'm gonna read John's question. So John says, asks, the progressive design build process is focused on increased collaboration. This could mean full or open communication in a verbal environment, but ideally it will involve some better way of technical communication supported by systems. What systems does the panel consider to be the most effective in supporting the process, particularly in our COVID remote work environment? That's a really good question, John. I'll start off with one item I think is really important. We've always had team health clusters as part of integrated product delivery teams. The team health cluster's job is to make sure that the team is operating at peak efficiency. That team becomes increasingly more important in a COVID remote world. In other words, how you surveys of the team to understand that everyone feels like they're giving complete value, surveys that determine whether or not everybody's committing their best input to the project, and everybody's focused on the objective, becomes way more important when you're remote, right? So those touch points that occur during Zooms and all these other things become really important, because you can't, it's hard to read body language to a screen like we used to do when we were all in the room together. So being able to, ask a lot more questions, do more surveys, at least from my point of view, has been critical for me to understanding and making sure the team still operates like I like to see big room teams operate. You guys, Ron and Andy, what do you guys see lately during COVID?
One of the things I would say, for the remote part of the big rooms, a couple things we've been using successfully. One is doing pool planning and Bluebeam sessions, where you can create tags, you can move them, you can have the conversation. You just can't beat that part of it. And and I've just finished a project where it was a real small hospital project where we use smart sheets, and smart sheets would allow you to have predecessors and successors, and we were able to use that successfully and turned out well for a small project. So there's different tools out there that can be used. The one thing I would say about meetings is having video on, so you can see the people in the room just like you would if you were in a big room. What causes disconnect is when you see their name and you're not sure if they're even on the call, or they're doing emails, or they left to go to the bathroom, right? So having them, where you can see everybody, in my mind, helps that, cohesiveness of the team and the team health, as you mentioned.
Anybody else?
Since COVID, though, Ron, I've noticed on all these Zoom meetings, go-to meetings and such, there aren't any bathroom breaks given. I mean, it's just sometimes you got to turn your screen on. So,
true civil engineer comment.
Hey, it all goes downhill. I don't know if you guys knew that. So one item just to concur with Ron, I was on the project as well. It was in the desert. Ron being from Sacramento, us being from San Diego, interior design from Denver, contractor in Las Vegas, architect in Omaha, that sort of thing. We've been working that remote aspect with big rooms for such a long time on those projects that COVID didn't really cause too much of a transition in regard to that. But like Steve said, the team health, absolutely, you could see that dip where after a while people were, I mean, you're at home the whole time. You're not actually getting out. You're not flying out to see the project. I just flew out the last 2 days, Monday, to go see a bunch of projects that I hadn't seen in 6 months. And that alone caused an increase in my enthusiasm for those projects just being out there. So I can see where that team health aspect comes in. So I think, Steve, that's a great idea, is to have those wellness checks incorporated more. But like go-to meetings, Zoom meetings, Microsoft Teams, some sort of file sharing, and being able to put it up on the screen, and having even a touch screen and a stylus pen or something like that to even walk through Bluebeam sessions, something to be able to walk through plans and take the time to send out an invite to 4 or 5 people, have your own individual cluster meetings online like that, to both connect with the screens on and sharing the screen to see the plans in front of you, or just call that 15-minute meeting every now and then to reconnect and just dive in like you would in a typical cluster breakout.
Yeah. There's one thing I would just say, you know, we talked about culture and big rooms, is that we miss out on is kind of the lean training side of it. Not everybody knows all the processes, and the education and onboarding to get people's knowledge up to a certain level is still important. Yep. And we would typically do those, you know, sessions in person with everybody, but now we're having to create some type of workshop or training session remotely. And it's more difficult, there's no doubt, but I think that is still an important aspect that gets overlooked, that just can't assume that everybody knows all the lean lingo and processes without some help and some training.
No, that's a good point, Ron. There's an amazing amount of people who still have not experienced that, and doing onboarding and periodic trainings, even to refresh us who may not have done tags in a while, is really, really important, because you lose that skill set really fast if you're not using it often. So I definitely agree. I'm gonna step out of chat questions. I'll come back to you in a minute, Dave. Don't worry. Just go ahead and keep eating your awesome dinner. I got a question for Brandon. Brandon, of the previously mentioned tools, methods, which one delivers the best results for projects in your humble opinion? And how have lean principles and progressive design build models influenced the mentorship and professional growth of your staff? Your organization, tell us how it's working with you internally.
Yeah, a couple of kind of important related questions there. I would say, kind of picking up where Ron had sort of teed up a little bit, that, one of the lean tools that we've been using a lot of recently is target value design. And I've become a huge fan of it for a few different reasons. One is that it's a lot of us in the kind of big room are visual thinkers by nature, or information is more easily sort of disseminated in a visual form. I think that people tend to glaze over and lose attention, especially a lot of the, kind of this key decision makers, when things are too granular and numeric. And so, what we call the mountain range, which is a graphic depiction of our key elements of the skin and the mechanical systems, it reduces a lot of waste, in that we sort of stop talking about elevators and kind of the minor aspects of things that really don't move the needle on cost or value relative to big decisions. And it allows us also easy comparisons to benchmark projects. So TVD is definitely one that we've been using a lot of, and I think it's a great and facile tool. It also relates to John's question about digital interface, because we often sort of use our BIM 360 shared digital platforms to help compare and generate a lot of the information that's in the TVD models. So that's a really great interactive tool. Other lean tools, I would say, the sort of set-based thinking, the progressive model really allows for that to happen in a really important way. And there's elements, I think when you get into traditional models, contractor and design teams tend to be a little bit risk averse. You tend to sort of go with what you have a very finite amount of time to make quick decisions and lock things in. And I think one of the things that we've seen suffer in that conversation has been sort of prefabricated technologies and approaches to kind of modular or systematized thinking and panelized, cladding, things of that nature. You tend to short circuit those conversations if there's not a known quantity. And I think that the idea that the progressive model allows the lean process of really testing multiple options, which is a big part of our firm's kind of thinking when we're allowed to do it. So I love that one. And maybe a last one is sort of just the continuous cost conversation, the cost estimating. It's a great sort of aspect of lean, where there's just a lot of constant dialogue and in weighing those options. That is really important for the owner to have real-time pulse on kind of where the project is trending. The mentorship piece, I think that as we were getting ready for this panel, that's been a big one for me. That one of the great things about the design build model, as an architect, is I have an amazing respect, and just we have a tremendous staff that is coming out of various design schools and joining us, and they're the future leaders of our profession, and I love the people I work with. A lot of them come to our practice with very little realization of the lines that they're drawing, and I think it's a common denominator for a lot of us on this call. And putting people in these situations where they are coupled with trade partners and in the big rooms, and really allows for a real-time kind of vertical learning curve that you just can't get in a design office by itself. I really love that, and I think that one of the silver linings about this whole COVID thing, what we were just talking about, is just that there's more access for our level 8, 9, 10 staff who are subject matter experts doing key research on and coordination to join the big room calls, or to listening in on the big client call or the kind of design review session. And so the osmotic, kind of mentorship is happening actually a little bit more rapidly now than it used to. When you can only put 2 people on a plane or whatever to get to a certain meeting. Now you can have 5 sitting in there on the side of the Zoom that aren't maybe participating, but they're learning. And I think that's really a key thing for all of us.
No, that's great. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add from the field aspect on the lean tools. I go back to last planner system for sure, and the aspect of the learning portion, where you're really able to go back and people are putting their stickies up and making their promises, and then they're coming back to figure out how they did. How do we do? What is our grade? And I remember being on a project where I was supporting, that was probably their goal was the 80%, and they were probably at 30 or 40, but they didn't project that. They didn't make that public. So I had to kind of expose the team. So I told them in a group of 40, 50 that this is not right. This is not accurate. Sorry, you failed. And it wasn't to expose them just for the sake of doing that. It was really to help them that, hey, we're not really being clear with the team with how you came about making those promises and what the actual delivery was supposed to be. So that exposure helped them to really go back and dig and really understand where the breakdowns were. So I try to emphasize when we're working on the last planner system, and that one component of actually having real-time learning is something that we don't normally get in our world, in the field especially, because we're on the next thing. It's broken, we got to keep going. And so when you get a chance to fix it in real time and understand what you did and really correct the ship, and where you're going, it's empowering to know that you have that opportunity. So I tell them, let's not get caught up in not winning one particular week. Let's get caught up in why we didn't win in one particular week, so that we can correct it and not have to wait to the end of the project to find out how far off we were. So we can correct the ship in real time. And then the other one is daily huddles. I mean, they're simple things, and yes, they're distancing now with daily huddles, but when I talk to our GFs in the field and leaders, that is something they're doing on a regular basis that just brings so much value, from a morning daily huddle of saying, okay, go team, here's our plan. And then coming back saying, okay, did we do our plan? Do we execute? And then again, understanding why, but making those commitments with each other, having these visual aids out there in the field, showing what my expectations are for a given track of work, where I'm going to be from column A to column Z, and if I get there and why I didn't get there, and learning what to do the next day, or what maybe a particular craft didn't bring that enabled me to not do that work. So it's all those things that enforce the constant conversations that happen. And when you see the field teams, not just your GFs, but just your people putting in the work, actually having those conversations, when you see that happening at that level, where one, they're taking initiative, they care about what they do and how it gets done, that's magic right there. When your field leadership can kind of stand back and watch their team do the work, I mean, that's ideal. I think that's what we all would want to see. And the daily huddles allow for that, because it causes those people on those lower levels of the work necessarily get to buy in, they get to have an input, they get to be a part of the conversation and take some ownership, where they now have skin in the game, and now it's going to be on them. And so they take that very seriously.
They get to see the other 12, 13, 14 disciplines that are involved with a decision that they make. And that's really cool to realize that you're part of making it work. And real crappy if you don't deliver on time. You start to feel that pressure. And when you deliver under pressure, that's the adrenaline rush when it comes to our line of work, I guess.
Yeah,
that's awesome. All right, I'm gonna dive out into the chat and take another question. We have one here from Dave. It says, in a progressive design build project, have you encountered a situation where what was in the best project interest cost your firm more money? If so, how did you deal with it? And I'm assuming, Dave, you're talking about when you say cost your firm money, you talk about individual companies' money, like the design team had to do more work and it cost them money, or the overall project, it cost the overall project money?
The question is really based on if, for instance, Ron as the structural engineer needs to redesign structural connections because the structural steel fabricator has something that's going to save the project a lot of money, but it's going to cost Ron's firm $50,000 in additional structural analysis and calcs.
Okay.
How do you deal with that in a progressive design build construct?
All right.
That's a good question. We haven't come across that yet.
Yeah.
But, I think the way that we would look at it, just like an IPD team, we would say, all right, we have, expend this amount of money and our benefit is what? If we're going to spend $50,000, do we save $100,000?
Yep.
Then it's worth doing. And we would probably ask to get compensated for the extra effort in a design build project.
Would you ask to get compensated by the steel fabricator? Like, would you become their sub?
Oh, could.
Yeah. Wherever the money, I agree with Ron. In an IPD, that would be the expectation, is that if the overall bottom line gets a positive, that the extra added cost of Ron should just be in an IPD, it's just a transfer from one bucket to another. Right. In a progressive design build, I guess it's an actual change order from somebody to somebody else. But in an IPD, if there's a plus savings for Ron spending another $100,000 to save $1 million, you bet your ass we're going to take it, and we're going to give Ron $100,000, and we're going to take that other $900,000 and bank it.
Yeah. Now, we had a project that wasn't progressive; it was before progressive. And we finished with design development for a Kaiser project, and it was over budget. And it came down to the point where the project could stop. We needed to find significant money in the project. And one suggestion was to do a performance-based design and kind of step outside the code, do an alternate means of compliance, have to bring in a peer reviewer. And we guesstimated at the effort that it would take. And it was about $60,000. And so we did it in 2 steps. We said, well, let us spend enough time to find out if it looks like we can save. In this case, it was tie down anchors and deep foundations and number of frames. So when we finished the first phase, and we're about 30K into it, we said, looks like we can eliminate almost all of these tie down anchors. Maybe a few are still going to be in the project. And they said, all right, we're authorizing you to finish the design. Let's see where we end up. And as it turned out, we got rid of all of it. The savings to the team was between $500,000 and $750,000 because we didn't have to do all the testing and the protocols that went with OSHPD and the delay in construction. And so that's an example of when the team said, hey, we'll find money for you if you can make a significant a benefit to the project as a whole. And then the project went forward and we finished it. So
Anybody else? Thank you, Ron. I'm
Maybe
gonna
one quick note on David's question.
Yep.
We have a mechanism on a couple of recent projects based on kind of a risk reward contract partnership where, you know, the value of everyone's scope and contract, it's voluntary, but, you know, if you're a partner in the team, you can sign on and you are financially incentivized at the end of the project if the project exceeds cost or schedule performance targets. So, you know, it's often like a, you know, small amount of sacrifice to get a bigger carrot sort of at the end of the project that
Sure.
drives a lot of decisions.
Sure, absolutely. All right. Let's see, I'm gonna take one of the questions here, then I'm gonna roll back to another one of Dave's questions. I like the next question Dave asked. Let me do this one real quick. I want to ask the questions and this goes out to the group. Besides projects specifically, have you guys implemented lean processes within your companies and other places other than projects? I drank the Kool-Aid and determined that the entire HMC company would all be operating within lean process, accounting, marketing, everybody. It was not as quite as successful as I had hoped, but I was damn gonna make it happen. How about the rest of you? Have you tried to push this out to other departments within your companies? And if you have, what has been a success?
I'll give you a couple examples. So we use the choosing by advantages process for promotion to an executive position in the company. And so you know how those things go. If someone is a senior person, they automatically think they get the next promotion, and that might not be the best thing for the company. And so we went through a CBA process with 3 candidates, and the last thing we want was any of those candidates to leave the company. They're all valuable. But if we could define why someone was more qualified or had significant advantages to get the role, maybe the others then would understand that, hey, there's probably a different role for them in the executive group. And that's exactly what we did. And the discussions so we had them respond to some questions. We filled in a matrix of their attributes, and then we had a discussion of senior management. And we all learned here. I worked with everybody since they're hiring. I learned things that I didn't even know about that were brought up by other individuals. So that's one way of using the CBA process. And the only other thing I'll jump in real quick is we've been using retrospectives. So, we'll have a process that we think today is the most efficient way of doing something, but that might not always be the case tomorrow. And so challenging the status quo and doing a retrospective where we get the right stakeholders and we ask 3 questions. What should we keep doing that's working well? What should we stop doing that's not working at all? And then what should we start doing that we haven't done that could improve the process? And we've had a lot of success with making process improvements by doing those type of retrospectives. Take a little bit of time, but the benefits are tremendous.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron. Anybody else?
Yeah, I can add, we've had a couple of things that we've done. Some work, some haven't. We've had a global kind of initiative that tried to bring the entire company into this fold of doing lean, and it sounded great, and there was a lot of people excited about it, but it still was kind of like a push down kind of thing. So it didn't really get a lot of buy-in, and it just kind of eventually fizzled out. Out of that came what we have now is called the CIC, which is our Continuous Improvement Committee. And all that is, excuse me, in each division, we'll have department heads of each department come together. I believe it's on a bi-monthly basis where they sit for an hour and they're talking throughout the month about some of the issues that they're encountering. And so they'll have ask of each other and say, maybe the construction group has an ask of engineering because we've seen some issues on a project, or accounting has an issue with our teams not turning in time cards on time, things like that. So they may be simple, but they become someone else's nightmare. And so when you bring in the people that have the authority to make a decision, they all sit in the room together and we're communicating about what's on task, what promise that we have that we kept and delivered, and do we need to have some type of training session where we've had engineers that would come in and do an actual hour presentation to our field leads about some things to look out for, to be another set of eyes in the field when things didn't go as planned. And we could have caught that before it was installed, but we didn't know. So it was installed, we see it, and now we can realize that next time we'll do it this way. So it really is like this pool type of scenario where we have ask of different people within the company of things that we need from them in order to help our job be better. And so it's actually it's been going on for several years now. And again, it's just a bi-monthly thing, and we sit in there for an hour or two maybe, and it's very, very productive. I think we walk away knowing that we're doing something that leads us into the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you, Henry. I appreciate it. All right. Question 8. So this is one of my favorite. Continuous improvement is an essential goal of lean systems, right? I drill it, yell it, talk about it all the time. Having that in mind, how does progressive design build method assist in continuous improvement to continuously improve the process to deliver projects? That's at the heart of integrated project delivery. I know we do progressive design build, and we must be learning and doing better, but it's not a tenet, all right? So how does progressive design have that as a tenet? Can anybody help with that?
Yeah, I'll give you the one example that I just mentioned internally, and it's doing retrospective. So, let's say in a progressive design build, you're halfway through the pre-con effort, and then asking those 3 questions: what should we keep, stop, and start doing, so that the second half of that design, you can make an immediate improvement. I think, lean thinking is challenging, the norm. Is there a better way of doing this? Is there a better system to be used? And then trying to learn from it. So the benefit to doing it multiple times with the same team is that you have the same players, and you can make an immediate improvement on the design and in construction. If you stop at some point, let's say the 3rd point or half point of construction, and do a retrospective, you'll find that you can make some quick improvements that, rather than waiting to the end of the project and saying, here's what we learned on this project, and then everybody goes their own way. And so while you have everybody together, why not make those improvements right now?
Awesome. All right. Anybody else? All right. I'm gonna roll back into the chat box. Watch my time here. Another question from Dave Armstead. It says, I have heard design principals share that they struggle with rewarding their personnel assigned to big rooms for extended periods with raises and promotions, as they are not, they are out of sight and out of mind. Out of sight and out of decision makers within the firm. Do you have any suggestions for design firms that may be new to big rooms to address this? That's a good question. I'll let the panel speak first. I do have a personal experience with that.
I can jump in with this one. I have heard this from a number of our staff, and I think it's a commitment on the part of team members to go and be a part of these processes, and they develop an invisibility to the firm and to leadership. I think that we look for a lot of opportunities in our company to allow emerging voices to kind of come back around. I think one mechanism we have is an internal research and development grant. So team members that are embedded in projects can, we had a recent design build where one of the team members in the big room was also doing concurrent research on embodied carbon of precast panels, and he reported back and was able to present that information to the firm and kind of get a lot more visibility through kind of a parallel but related effort. I think that just finding alternate ways for those folks to kind of come back and report about what they're doing is good for the firm, but also good for their visibility. But it's not perfect. You have to have kind of the right linkages to between leadership and teams.
I agree. Anyone else?
I would say one of the things that we've done in the past is, where someone might be in a big room for a long time, is bring in those lessons learned that they got in the big room. And we have what we call training day, where we set up 2 days of basically presentations. And so it gives them the opportunity to have a leadership position where they can explain to the others what they've been doing, what the benefits have been, and what they've learned, and how we can take that information and take that to somebody else in the company that may not have had that experience, even though they've spent a lot of time out of the office in big rooms and co-locations.
Great. Anyone else?
I would question the verbiage assigned to big rooms. I mean, are they assigned to it to just sit there and take information in, or are they participating? Are they generating content? Are they promoting the project on behalf of the company that has sent them there in the first place? If that is the case and it's a successful project, then that's number one. That's a star, number one. Number two is, like Ron said, the retrospectives and the ability to learn from the big room. Do they bring back information, or do they bring back inspiration from the big room on the project? Are they reporting out to the company themselves that sent them in the first place to convey some of the information that was passed along in the big room? I mean, the big room is a collaborative space. It doesn't end in the big room. It's got to come back to the company itself. So there should be some way of noticing whether or not they've been just sitting there, or if they've been participating and gaining that knowledge and gaining those tools and bringing that information back to the company and promoting collaboration in the company themselves.
Awesome. Anybody else? So I agree with all what you guys have said. I've been my 10 years in the field in various big rooms. I've had to deal with this quite a bit with bringing my teams back from long stints in the field and projects. Mm-hmm. And the first time I ran into this, it was a real fight to get a bonus and some, opportunities for my staff I had in the field, which I thought was just ridiculous, right? Like you said, Andy, we finished the project early. The project got awarded its bonus as a part of the reward part of the project. It makes total sense that somebody did something right on the team. They should be rewarded. It's amazing how much of a fight it is to prove that to people who have not been in the field. And so I did like you did, Brandon and Ron, is that I had the team come back and do periodic training, teaching of people in the office, so they got exposure there. And I had as often as I could had them train senior personnel and stuff they had no clue about. Right. So they had to say, oh, we haven't been in the field. We don't know anything about pool planning or anything. Well, I have my junior people teaching my senior people how to pool plan. Right. And when you've been taught something, you have to acknowledge that someone that did, at least in this area, this person was superior to your knowledge because they taught you. That made it a lot easier for me to be able to push through those, either promotions, bonuses, or whatever. And there has to be a certain amount of trust on their behalf that the senior leadership in the field that these people have been under vouches for them, and that they have gained certain expertise in the field that can never be gained in the office, and trust that you're not lying. I like to say that. I like to say trust that you know what you're talking about. I like to say trust that you're not lying when you say these people have advanced to a certain level, because that's what you're saying. If I come back and tell you this guy is great, he's done this, and you say I don't buy it, you think I'm lying, or you don't trust my judgment. So that's something else you have to work out. So I agree.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, I wanted to add to that I think from my perspective of watching engineers that work in our office that have gone out essentially like as kids,
Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
go out to a project as essentially like as a kid, someone who's just learning, and they come back with this wealth of knowledge. So there's nothing like being out there in the real world, gaining real experience, and they're growing exponentially. I think
Yes.
it's important that we kind of make sure that we're changing the image or what it means to go
Yes.
out into the field, especially for that group that thought, oh, I'm working at this company, I've got my little office or cube, but I'm gonna do these wonderful things here, and suddenly you're sent out to what you think is like the dungeon, and you're gonna be trapped in the job for 3 years, and you think no one's gonna know me. And we need to kind of like reconstruct what that means. That there's nothing negative about that. It's actually an opportunity for you to gain some career-changing skill sets that you will bring back, and you're somewhere different when you come back because you've been in the trenches. And
Yes.
you're not just talking from a theoretical standpoint, you're now talking about what you've done, what it looked like, and how you contributed to it, and how it's made you better in your craft. So I think that the messaging and the imaging of what that means to go out for that group of folks is there needs to be a intentional message for that, so that they're not feeling like they're being sent away.
That's a very good point, because designers, it's different. For contractors, it's a badge of honor, right? Every guy I've worked with in the field is a VP now. When I first did it back in 1994, they're all VPs or project execs, right? It is a different thing for designers. When you come back from the field, it's not this feeling that, oh my God, this guy has all this wealth of knowledge, firsthand problem solving in the field, real-time problem solving. It's this really weird thing that, and if you're not at some desk with some 50-watt bulb over your shoulder drawing lines, that somehow you're not the designer you should be. So I totally agree. Trying to, in my opinion, I don't think an architect is complete unless he spent a lot of time in the field answering for what he put on paper. Yeah. In this case, put in a BIM model, right? For himself. And having a contractor say that's dumb, or in the contractor ease, that's just stupid. We don't do it like that. It'll take 10 guys to lift that in place. Whereas if you design like this, it only takes 2. To understand those kind of concepts is you can only get in the field. Yeah. So I totally agree with you.
Good point.
All right. Let's see. I'm watching my time, 6:24. All right, we're doing all right. So let's roll over to this next question. I want to ask a quick question. Let's see, number 9, I think it is. Was it 8? No, I was going to jump over 9 because 9 was pretty close to what we talked earlier when we talked about, how we kind of use tool to help us work better remotely. So we had a pretty good, robust conversation back there. So if you guys are okay, I'm going to jump over that. Question 10. So waste is the opposite of value and comes in many forms throughout the life of a project. And we talked about the 8 ways before. In what ways do you believe the progressive design build procurement methods eliminates waste? Ron, you hit a big time on stop making us waste money, chasing projects in pursuit. What else? How else does progressive design help us remove waste?
I'll jump in on this one, and it kind of ties back to the very beginning of the discussion, is when you have, first of all, progressive design build versus design build, it kind of promotes the companies that are involved, the companies that have been brought on board, the people that have been brought on board. It kind of promotes more of an A-team effect. It brings in the companies or the disciplines send the people that are either really used to the process itself, or they're enthusiastic about diving in because they know, based on the setup, the progressive design build, the IPD, the lean process, that there's going to be a collaborative effort. There's going to be that chance for training. There's going to be that chance for really giving to the project and learning from it and getting involved and being excited about it. And that promotes the mentality of really diving in early, and the diving in early and finding out the unknowns and make the unknowns known early and discussing them and determining how best to deal with it over the life of the project, and finding cost savings, finding schedule savings, delivering for the owner, the owner's in the room with you, the the contractor gets into the room early as well. All of these discussions that are happening, you can't not eliminate waste. Some people who are not used to the process look at this form of everybody being onboarded so early that that's waste alone, but that's pennies compared to what the overall cost of the project would be if you found something 50% through the way of construction. And like Henry said earlier, having to pull the entire team off, and then your A team that was out there gunning on the first floor has to pull off the job. And then you can't find those people anymore. So you get the B team, you get the C team. And we've had projects that we've worked on where you go from having the A team and all of a sudden the owner wants to slow down because there's unknowns that surface because there wasn't enough due diligence early on, that we have to re-examine what we're going to pay for this project. And all of a sudden the project gets downsized, and then the firms that are working on the project pull their A teams off themselves and they send in their C teams. So all of a sudden you have waste all over the place, both from stopping, and you have people who have not worked together as a team on this particular project even. And it just generates a mess that just yields tons of waste. So waste is the opposite of value. Absolutely. Pay up front, invest up front, I guess would be the best word. Invest up front, and you eliminate waste on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, and I kind of hit on it before about, the phase, that pre-con phase where you have an integrated team together that have the opportunity to, collaborate to find best ways of delivering the project. And it usually comes down to how you want to build the project. And so if you're going through and doing a set-based design, every step of that process is adding value by comparing systems, looking at the costs, looking at the schedule. Do we do prefabrication? What would that cost us? How much time would we save? All those elements in progressive design build are in this pre-con GMP phase that a lot of times is not available. The time period to do that is not available. So I would say that the progressive design build procurement process, gives us the opportunity for eliminating waste, adding innovation, and bringing value to the project.
All right, very good. All right, I got another. I'm gonna go ahead and this is a great diverse market. I'm gonna put Henry on the spot here and ask him my question number 11. Actually, it's not question number 11. I'll come back to it. Well, it's kind of question number 11, but so this question is there kind of a what should we be talking about, or what have we not talked about? And I think one of the things we haven't talked about is there's a huge discussion about diversity, equity, and inclusion going on. There's no way denying it, right? So I'm gonna start with Henry and I'm gonna ask the question, how can lean culture naturally affect diversity, equity, inclusion? Is this something that can help address that discussion or benefit that discussion, or is it something that has nothing to do with that conversation? I'll start with you, Henry.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Steve. I'm very passionate about that for a whole lot of reasons, and working within our own company with our diversity and inclusion initiatives, and just with the current climate of the world, all that. Lean lends itself to, I almost say like they're like sisters in a sense, and they could be, that it can lend itself to allowing for those things that we struggle with when it comes to the question of DE&I. How do you bridge the gap? And Lean, because of what it promotes, which is respect for people, giving equal ground, allowing the person that has 40 years of experience and 3 years of experience or 3 months of experience to be at the same table, contributing to what should happen on this project. Because sometimes the person that has 40 years of experience doesn't necessarily see the forest for the trees. And we have that term of having a new set of eyes. Sometimes that person who's never done it, never seen it, has maybe the best idea. And then it's helping that person who has that experience willing to listen to that person that has zero experience. And so it helps to kind of level the playing field. And so it absolutely has, it paves the way for a natural conversation regarding diversity and inclusion, and having this inclusive environment that welcomes everyone into the forum to have input. And so I think it's when you look at a company that practices lean, that really does it well and tries with great intention, that falls sometimes, but really recognizes the value of their people first. I think that's what lean does. And I think that's what, when we talk about diversity and inclusion in the business case for diversity and inclusion, and what it really does at the end of the day, it produces a better project, a better outcome. There's data to support that. And lean paves the way for that to naturally happen. Obviously, there are other things we need to do to go along with that, but I believe that it helps create that environment that I think we're all looking for, and I'll end with this, is that I always tell people that we spend more of our lives, at the end of the day, with the people we work with than our own families, period. There's no hiding it, right? And if you throw commuting in that, it's like, when do we get to see our family, right?
Yeah.
So it behooves us to enjoy what we do, and then enjoy with the people we do it with. And so if we're going to spend 8 to 10 hours a day working with people, I want to like you a little bit. I want to be able to have a real conversation with you. I want to be able to have conflict and resolve problems and not hate you after the end and look to hide from you because I just don't want to spend time with you. I want to figure out ways to have solutions. And so I think it really, it's a tool that, or providing a call, I wouldn't even say it's a tool. It's a thing we should do that creates a culture that can help really address that D&I issue that we have in our country, and also obviously on job sites. So that's my 2 cents.
I like it. Very good, man. I like it. Anybody else?
I think Henry hit it on the head when he said respect for people, right?
Yep.
And the open communication and collaboration. It's just a different environment in a lean environment where I think a lot of those biases go by the wayside.
I agree. These processes, progressive design build and integrated or lean project delivery, are not siloed processes. In other words, you can't blindly throw them over the wall. Whomever you have to work with the person you're handing it off with, and it's not a handoff. It's an integrated moving of the work from one phase to the next, instead of like, I'm done here. Go do whatever you do, whoever you are, and I don't care who you are. Oh, by the way, this is a hand-holding of the process from start to finish. That is a much more intimate delivery process, I like to call it. To the point where in some processes we do what we call strength finders, right? We do understandings of what each individual strengths are, so that I can better work with you when I understand where your strengths are, and we can capitalize on them instead of me constantly poking you and reminding you about your weaknesses.
I'm a people person, Steve.
Yes, you are. You definitely are, Andy. So I just think that I always tell my company that the personal commitment to integrated project or progressive design build requires that you have a much more open mind and a willingness to be vulnerable around people who will see that you cannot spend that much time with this many people and not have them see your weaknesses and recognize and accept you for your strengths, right? So I totally agree with what you said. Yes.
And they recognize that they can accept you for your weaknesses and have that ability to pitch in at that spot. You recognize your weaknesses and you recognize your strengths, and the ability in these projects to recognize and gain that confidence in yourself and be able to challenge some other discipline that you would never have the chance to challenge, and actually have the entire room say, never thought of that, because it's a completely different perspective and it challenged the whole basis of design. It's a great system from that perspective.
I totally agree. I got one question from academia, and the question is are your companies providing training activities to your interns and exposing them to what is being talked about here? For us in academia, students look for validation from outside. If they never saw where they were not exposed to these topics, they quickly zoom out and they think that this is academic. And I totally agree. And well, at least in my company, we try to expose the staff to as much as possible. We do host formal training, understanding that if you're not operating within a project, it's hard to retain all of it. But we do try to create opportunities where either they can exercise it within a project to some level, even when the project's not a quote unquote progressive design build project or a lean project delivery. I do encourage them to use as many tools as possible and within their internal teams as much as possible until they can't get to one of those types of projects. So anybody else?
I just would add on that, we have 2 days back to back, or we're going to spread them this year, where what we were doing before was we were flying everybody in from all the offices to the main office, and just so that we could do training together. And the trainings were rapid fire. There might be 8 1-hour sessions through the day, and lean would always be one of them. But it might be steel design, or performance-based design, seismic design, on and on. There's so many different things for structural engineers that they need to know, and all the different materials that they need to get exposed to everything. And so interns or seasoned engineers, they all go through the same thing, and they all get to hear firsthand. So it gives them a resource to go to. So if they're interested or have more questions, they know who presented or the committee that presented the information. Now they have somebody they can reach out to for further learning.
And Ron, we know that in the Buehler that there's at least a 2-hour class on how to pick the most expensive wines.
That I'm an expert in.
Yeah, so we just want you to know about that one.
Hey, Steve,
All right. Yes, sir.
I'll add to that. We have our interns that come in, they get a chance to kind of live in the day in the life of what it means to be a shop
Okay.
worker and then in the field worker.
Yep.
So they get up, they are given this orientation. They have a shop tour virtually, and then physically walking through the shop, seeing the different tools and what we do and how we do it. And then the next day they show up at 6 in the morning, maybe 5:30 now because we start a little earlier. So they have to be there at 5:30 for our stretch and flex, boots on time. And if they're not on time, they're going to get shamed by the foreman, and that when they're walking in late, like he would do anybody else.
Yeah.
And so they're in there and they spend time knocking duct together, soldering pipe, understanding the systems, and then they actually do a it's an activity where they get to compete against their fellow students, and they put together, say, a VAV box and seal it all up, and then we'll do a test on it and to see what holds the most pressure, and there'll be a winner, and we'll take pictures and kind of make fun of them in a big room. But it gives them a chance to kind of like really kind of feel and touch and feel day in the life of what it means to build something. So when they actually go and design that, and maybe they're one day going to estimate it, they really understand the parts and pieces and the time that go into putting that thing together when it's not just a line or a BIM model.
That's cool, man. That's very cool.
One thing from civil and survey perspective, kids that are coming out of folks that are coming out of school, they have a lot of technical knowledge, but they don't have a lot of practical knowledge of both how to apply that technical knowledge or the process that it takes to get to a finalized constructible project. So at our firm, more recently in the last couple of years, mostly because it's tough to find a surveyor nowadays, we have been taking our newer engineers and putting them on a survey crew and going out to stake construction drawings and actually be in the field and pounding in stakes and kind of trial by fire there, and seeing how that plan comes to life in the field, and then being able to have that experience from the field and seeing what those two things look like, to then now you're coming back and looking in the computer and you have this real world right in front of you, 4 feet is actually 4 feet and not a couple inches on a screen. And it gives them that new perspective of what the plan looks like when it's actually constructed. And
Wow.
from that point, that there's that ability to instantly see that this is more than just any book that I ever opened. And then that piques the interest of how did we get to this plan being prepared at this point in the first place? What kind of approvals, what kind of standards, why was it built this way? And they start asking questions and learning from it that way too.
Awesome. That's good, man. I appreciate it. Anybody else? All right. With that, my last question. Provide one final takeaway. What, here we are. We've talked about lean and its impact on progressive design build, and we'll give some awesome comparisons and the ability to use it. There are a lot of tools that are commutable, comportable. How do you say it? Transferable from lean to progressive design build. So, what are some of the takeaways you guys would like to leave the group with from your various perspectives, if you will? I'll start with you, Andy.
Sure. So I'll start from the end and work my way back. So you, Steve, you, Ron, were on the project that I first started my lean journey on. Mm-hmm. It was a 28-month process.
Yep.
I consider you guys friends, and there's one common denominator when it comes to friendships is you have to trust that person. So we're not friends just because we were able to hang out after these meetings. It was in this project and what came of it. It was because this project was built from trust, from the culture that was built following the IPD, following the lean process, and what is now possibly the progressive design build future. Is that culture, again, Henry mentioned it early on, that culture that is developed when you realize that what you do affects so many other people, and what you say can affect the project in such positive ways. That culture that's created of the confidence and knowing that you're contributing, it's the process that I would prefer to follow if I was ever working on any jobs ever again. If I had one more job to do, I would want it to be an IPD progressive design build style project where going in, everybody's going to collaborate to make this the best project that they've worked on.
Awesome. All right. Nick, anybody else want to leave us some words of wisdom? No, Ron, you got something for us.
I will just say that progressive design build, that process is ideal for integrated lean processes and promotes collaboration. I think that, how you select the team, the value that everybody brings, the integration in a big room, the owners in the room making decisions on a daily basis, that culture that starts with team and becomes family. I think progressive design build has a leg up on other procurement processes in that alone.
Awesome. All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I guess one observation, Steve, is over seeing kind of projects evolve over the last decade or two. I think that, we're all experiencing that everything we're doing is bigger, it's faster, it's more complex. There's multiple funding sources, multiple owners, stakeholders. It's, so the idea that you could have sort of a one size fits all system that's frozen in time that addresses all that, I think is sort of, that's the variable that's really changing for all of us. And so the model of progressive is evolving. And I think that we need to use it, but we also need to adapt it to how things change in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. Henry, do you have anything you want to give us?
Yeah, I think that it's not to take lightly a few things. It's as much as we hear success stories in regards to lean delivery of any type, there are probably still a lot more failures happening that we don't speak about, and people just get kind of disenchanted and want to just say it's not worth my time, and I get that, and so what I say to that is that the investment that is required, the mindset that is essential, you got to spend the time, the team that you compile together, the owner that makes a decision on what GC is going to take the lead and bring it all together is critical. And when that is not done right, what you have is this disgruntled team operating on 2 cylinders when it should be 8. And at the end of the day, there's contention, there are bad experiences that carry on to the next project and continue to kind of give the dark side of that story of lean is not, it's not what you think it is. And you still have a lot of people promoting that concept. So as this evangelist for lean, like we all are, trying to say, hey, this is better. We know it's better, but you still have those people who don't believe it. Why? Because their experiences have told them it's not. And so we have an opportunity to help shape or reshape experiences. That's how we impact culture. We have to bring to the table what are our own personal worldviews, why I think the way I think. It's not wrong, right, or indifferent. It's just who I am. And that is going to show up on my place of work. And if you understand how I think, then you're going to have a little bit more appreciation and respect for it, like mine for yours. Yeah. And this is not business as usual. It can't be, because what we're trying to do is completely different and requires a different type of thinking. So I think you have to really be intentional about who's on the team and that best value approach and the scoring and seeing how people gel together in an interview process. There's certain things you just can't fake. And you have to have even people who are selecting those teams have that mindset of what they're looking for when they're watching a team work together in an interview table. Are they selling you a commercial, or are they giving you their authentic team? And it's really up for that group to really understand that, so they know what to look for when they say, okay, we're committed to you for the next 5 years. You are part of our family now. You're going to love them or you're going to hate them. You know, and they're going to hate you later too if they got to live with these people for those lives. So those things, they matter, and they really make a big difference. So I'd say spend the time to understand how you compile that team so you can see the success.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir. Well, I thank you guys. With that, we are at, we're a little early, 6:50, well, almost 6:50. We're at plus deltas. Please go ahead and just rapid fire your plus deltas into the chat box. We'll gather them and hold them there. You guys know that a plus are the things that we did right, you guys enjoyed, and a delta is an opportunity to do it better. All right. So I'm going to ask, instead of asking verbally, I'm just going to ask you all to type your plus deltas into the chat box, because it automatically records them and they're locked in, and the crew can use those to make this better for next time. I want to personally thank my panelists for your time and your evening. And even though none of us ate dinner, Dave was the only one who ate dinner doing this. I want to thank you all for your commitment and hanging out and giving us the benefit of your knowledge. It was very helpful, very beneficial. I personally got a lot of it, and I hope everybody on this Zoom got as much out of it as I did. So I really thank you about that. Appreciate all right. I don't know if Yves, you wanted to say anything or leave us with any words from as our president of the San Diego COP. Anything you want to leave with us before we go?
I want to thank everybody again. This was a fantastic panel, and thank you for bringing them together. Thank John for always organizing the distribution, the mailing list, and all that. And thank you all. This was amazing.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, John, for supporting us. Dave, thank you for all your help in helping me pull this together. And I want to thank my panels for being so willing and to come together and give us this time again. We appreciate it, guys. All right, everybody, have an awesome evening. I see all the plus deltas in here. Keep them coming. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Steve.